Junie B, first grader. Boss of Lunch. Written by Barbara Park. Chapter 5. Practicing. After school, I ran home from my bus stop. It was Mother's day off from work. She was in the backyard playing with my baby brother named Ollie. Ollie is 10 months old. He cannot skip or play tag or color. So far, I am not that satisfied with him. I ran out the back door. Mother, I'm going to be a helper, I shouted real cheery. I quick-handed her my permission slip. Read this paper. Hurry, it's from Mrs. Gutzman, I said. You remember Mrs. Gutzman, right? Mrs. Gutzman used to be my cookie lady last year, but this year she's branched out apparently, 'cause now she's the boss of the whole kitchen operation, I think. Mother read the permission slip. I bounced up and down, very excited. See, Mother, see, Mrs. Gutzman wants me to be her helper in the cafeteria tomorrow. And so, all you have to do is sign that paper, and I will be all set. I started back to the house. I'll go get you a pen. Mother hollered, Hold on to me. This really does sound like fun, Junie B, she said. But let's talk it over at dinner, okay? At dinner, you can tell Daddy and me all about it. I did a big breath at her. But I don't want to talk it over at dinner, Mother, I said. I want you to sign that paper right exactly now. Please, just sign it, okay? Mother smiled. Patience, Junie B, she said. Dinner is just a few hours away. I'd like Daddy to be in on this too. I rolled my eyes way up to the sky, 'cause Daddy always has to be in on everything. Finally, I went back in the house, and I walked around the kitchen very bored. There's not even anything to do in this stupid dumb house, I grouched. Then, all of a sudden, I spotted my backpack sitting on the floor. That's when I remembered my plastic mitts. I'd put them in my backpack to carry them home from school. I hurried to get them out of there. Then I quick put them on, and I ran to the refrigerator. Now I can practice touching food, I said, real thrilled. I opened up the door and started touching stuff. First, I touched some fruit, and an avocado, and a squishy tomato. Then, I put my hand in the butter, and also some creamy cottage cheese. Whoa! These mitts make touching food enjoyable, I said. After I was done, I put the mitts in my pocket, and I went to watch TV. Only I couldn't even pay attention that good, 'cause I kept on thinking about being a helper, of course. My excitement got bigger and bigger. Then, hooray! Daddy finally came home from work, and it was time for dinner. As soon as I sat down, I told Daddy all about Mrs. Gutzman. Then, surprise, I put on my mitts, and I waved my hands all around in the air. Look, Mother, look, Daddy. See what Mrs. Gutzman gave me? These are real professional mitts from the actual cafeteria. I sat up straight and tall. Mitts do not spread dirty germs, I explained. And guess what else? I already know how to use these babies. After that, I jumped down from my chair, and I ran around the table, and I touched everyone's dinner. I touched Mother's meatloaf, and Daddy's mashed potatoes, and Ollie's creamed corn. Also, I put creamed corn on Ollie's head. That was a funny joke, I think, only no one even laughed. Mother took my mitts away, She said that is not what mitts are for, young lady. At first, I thought I was in very big trouble. But more good news. When Mother and Daddy tucked me in bed that night, they gave me back my permission slip. And hooray, it was signed. We're going to let you help in the kitchen, said Mother. But no more funny business with the mitts. Got it? Got it, I said. A helper doesn't make things more difficult, Junie B, said Daddy. A helper makes things easier, okay? Okay, I said. Mother made her eyes real serious. And a helper is not the boss, Junie B, she said. Maybe you should try repeating that one. A helper is not the boss. I repeated it. A helper is not the boss, I said. A helper is not the boss. After that, Mother and Daddy looked calmer. They kissed me goodnight and turned off my light. I repeated it one more time. A helper is not the boss, I said. Then I closed my eyes, and I went to sleep. And I dreamed I was the boss. Chapter 6. Boss of Lunch. It was the funnest dream I ever had. I looked exactly like Mrs. Gutzman, except I had my own face. Also, I had my own apron, and my own plastic mitts, and my very own hairnet. I was a vision, I tell you. I worked my hardest in the kitchen. I washed all the carrots, and I made all the hoagies, plus also I ate all the sugar cookies. After a while, Room 1 came into the kitchen with their trays. The children saw how hard I was working. They called me Boss of Lunch, and they skipped around me in a happy circle. After that, they carried me all around on their shoulders. May did not participate. I waved at her when I went by. Then a duck flew in and chased her out of the room. That morning, I woke up laughing in my pillow. And guess what else? At school, my day kept on getting better and better, because I gave Mr. Scary my permission slip. And he let me go to the cafeteria at 10 o'clock a.m., and so I hardly even did much work. Mrs. Gutzman was delighted to see me again. She said I could start helping her very soon, but first she wanted to show me around the kitchen. It was the hugest kitchen I ever even saw. It was a kitchen a giant would have. Look at how big everything is, Mrs. Gutzman, I said. Look at that big dishwasher over there, and look at those big refrigerators, and whoa, look at those big sinks, and that big giant freezer. I kept looking. And look at that big can opener, and look at this big floor we're standing on, and look at these big walls, and that big light switch, and those big... Mrs. Gutzman interrupted me. Okay, let's move on, shall we? She said. I'd like you to meet some of the other folks who work here, Junie B. After that, she took me over and introduced me to 6 grown-ups. I waved at those people kind of shy. They waved back, plus also they said welcome. But here is the bestest part of all. After I met all the people, Mrs. Gutzman opened a big drawer, and she handed me a giant white apron. My mouth fell open at that hugy thing. You mean I get to wear this, Mrs. Gutzman? I said. I get to wear an apron just like yours? Wowie, wow, wow, this is my dream come true. Mrs. Gutzman winked at me. Well, we sure don't want you to mess up that pretty flower dress of yours, do we? She said. After that, she pulled the apron over my head, and she tied the straps around me. I looked down to the ground. The apron came down to my shoes almost. I twirled and twirled all around. Ooh, I love this apron, Mrs. Gutzman, I said. This apron makes me feel like a princess. Mrs. Gutzman said I had a good imagination. After that, I put on my mitts that she had given me, and I twirled some more. Now I have the whole complete outfit practically, I said, real happy. And then, what do you know? All of a sudden, Mrs. Gutzman reached into her apron, and she pulled out a hairnet. A hairnet just for me. She put it on my head. Oh boy, thank you, Mrs. Gutzman, thank you, I squealed. Then I zoomed to the oven and stared at myself in the glass. Look at me, just look at me. I look like a real professional lunch maker, I said. After that, I stared and stared at myself some more. And I couldn't even stop.